of these and just concentrated on the residential market. About a month ago, I discovered that one of my colleagues understood more about me, understood more about marketing than I did. And as I realized she was about a third of my age, I realized that I need to learn a lot more very, very quickly before I talk to a bunch of hardened, grizzled developers. So I put this date in my diary and said we are going to have a residential marketing update on the 24th of April. And of course my staff all ignored me till about a week ago when they sent you out the invitation. So I hope that some of you that may have only got the invitation last night don't feel aggrieved, and I'm very glad that you're all here. I'll talk for about half an hour. The slides will be in English here and in Vietnamese here. I receive, like many of you, between 8 and 10 SMSs a day asking me to buy real estate. And if you don't receive 10 SMSs a day, just give me your handphone number and I'll make sure that you get some of my invitations. I receive about 5 to 8 emails a week, mass emails. If any of you are short of a database, I have 649 databases on my laptop at the moment under databases. I can sell you Porsches, Fords, Novalands, SSGs, CBREs, database. I haven't got Vina Capitals. You guys obviously have a very good firewall, but most of us unfortunately allow our staff to use our databases. And they go out every day. And if you're short of a database, just give me a call because I think I can sell you a couple. As we know, real estate goes in cycles. And I stood up here at January and July last year, and we talked at our big breakfast and our fearless forecast about cycles. The reality was that the residential market picked up about 9 months ago. None of us really wanted to talk about it, and I think we all think that a cycle, for it to start, we've got to see prices or rents increase. I don't think we've seen that yet, but then, just to show you how wrong I was, I went to see a big developer yesterday, and he told me that he'd been putting up his prices since September the 1st last year. Not by much, just by 1 or 2% per quarter, but at least it's a sign, because we've been talking about falling prices, falling capital values for the last 5 years. So I'm needless to say, asked him to come and join our panel this morning, and hopefully you can work out which one of the 5 panelists it is. I'm not saying it's the start, it's the beginning of the end of the appalling recession that we've seen in real estate in Vietnam, but I think it's certainly the beginning of, or the end of the beginning. But I have been saying that for 5 years, so please forgive me. We've tried hard to put accurate, credible information up today. If we've got it wrong, please tell me to my face and I'll change it immediately. We probably got it directly from some of your colleagues, so if it's not correct, please tell me and I will change it. And as I said, this is a marketing update, not a market update. It's not a clever play on English words, but it's a subtle difference. Please forgive the new software we're using. It's called Pretty, and it's designed to get your attention. It certainly gets mine. We'll also talk about some of the things that in more mature markets than Vietnam they're using to sell property. We'll give an example. We'll give a few examples of what our Thai office is doing in Bangkok and our Singapore office is doing as well. They've taken completely different routes to provide services to their local developers, and we'll give some examples of what they're doing. The The story of real estate and certainly FDI is very linked in Vietnam. I'm sure that many of you remember 2007, 2008, when there were billions of dollars pouring into Vietnam, and at one point FDI from the real estate sector was over 30% of all money coming into Vietnam. And I think for 1 year it actually peaked at 45%. Many of those projects didn't actually get built. So when we do see these numbers picking up again, it fills me with a certain amount of fear, but it is good to see at least that some of the companies that have been so active in Vietnam, such as Xuan and Igal from Tel Aviv, coming back to Vietnam and prepared to put in quite credible numbers into the hospitality and to the residential sector. A big amount of that money is still coming from Korea. A little bit of it is coming from Japan, but the majority of it seems to be coming from Singapore and Hong Kong. That hasn't changed, and will continue. I expect that we'll see that for the rest of the cycle as it starts to warm up. I think many of the funds that have been active from Singapore and Hong Kong have realized that there isn't a Vietnamese word for distress, so they're not looking for it anymore. They're realizing prices are what they are, and if they're not prepared to pay them, they're not going to be able to buy sites. I think many of you are still scratching your head yourselves, looking to increase your land bank because much of it's been depleted, and realizing again that even you as local developers are finding it difficult to get sites at attractive prices. So, and that I expect will only get more difficult. We've seen obviously not just interest rates fall, we've seen the price of gold come down from $1,800 an ounce down last night to $1,280. We've seen the stock market go up 22% last year and back up another 15% so far year to date. So many my foreign friends say to me, where do the Vietnamese get their money from? And I say, because they play the markets. And you meet two 55-year-old Englishmen like myself and Mr. Emerton over there, and you say, how much money have you got on the markets? And he says, on which markets? And I say, the Vietnam market. And I can guess the answer. I won't embarrass you. But it's true. Europeans just don't understand how you can be so numerate, how you can buy gold at the right price and sell it before it peaks, how you can buy stocks when we don't see value, but you do. So if I had tried to host this breakfast 6 months ago, many of you would have suggested it was too early. But I think a few of you sitting on the front row, maybe the rows at the back, are realizing that you were able to sell property this quarter like you haven't been able to sell probably in the last 3 or 4 years. Not just in Ho Chi Minh City, around the provinces, and as well in Da Nang and in Hanoi. So to say that the market is still frozen, a day hardly goes by when Savills and CBRE is not called into question by the media. I haven't asked the media today. I spoke to them last week, and they're always comparing the fact that we think the market's gone up by 2% and Savills thinks it's gone down by 2%. I don't worry anymore. Perhaps I shouldn't read the papers. But again, these very flat lines really don't give us too much of an indication of what is actually happening. What really we need to be looking at today is the volumes. I don't think the prices, if we stand here on the 31st of December, I think the prices will still be relatively flat, but the volumes will have gone through the floor, sorry, through the ceiling. The volumes of, and it's not just what we saw last year at the affordable end. It seems to be across the board, and I'll come back to how we look at that in a minute. Just comparing the two cities, it's quite annoying, this new software, but my colleagues think it's cool, so I need to change. And you can see I do very slowly. You can see here the overhang of stock. These colors obviously match the carpet of the Pullman Hotel, carefully chosen. My colleagues think of everything nowadays. But you can see again here, the affordable, if you look at the bottom circle, the bottom pie chart, the affordable sector, the take-up seems very, very strong. There's very little unsold stock, just 7% in the affordable sector, whereas in Hanoi, the affordable sector is not doing so well. So again, one of the things that I'll come on to in a minute is where should we be investing? Where should we be putting our money? You can see here, if you just run your eye along the 80,000 number, the take-up and the sales volumes of condos in Ho Chi Minh over the last 5 years has been about 35,000. If you bear in mind that on an average year in Singapore, a city of 4 or 5 million people, the take-up is only between 16 and 20,000 a year. You can just see how bad these numbers have been, how low they've been for a country of 92 million. And my own view is that when confidence, not prices, when confidence comes back into the market, and that confidence will be fueled by other asset classes not performing so well, when confidence comes back into the property market, the sales numbers will rocket. They won't just increase marginally by 2, 3, 4%. They will increase by 15, 20, 30, 40, 50%. So I expect these numbers to really spike later this year. And confidence and sentiment, when it disappears completely. The tide goes out. The tide completely was gone out 2009, 10, 11, 12, and at the early part of last year. The reality is the tide is now coming back. When it comes back, it'll come with a rush. So if I stood up here 5 years ago and said, you need to give payment terms of 2 years post-completion, you need to be asking your buyers to put down a maximum of 50% before you give them the keys. I think most of you would have shocked me, or certainly not wanted to deal with CBRE. The reality is that in order to do that in many places, developers have had to do that. They've had to be really, really creative. Unfortunately, decisions were often made in the heat of the moment to get sales, to get people to come to the showrooms. And again, some developers that have done bare shell units to deliver that have, and if they're selling to an owner-occupier market, may have realized that now they need to give a very large amount of cash contribution to get people to fit out their units before they take them over. So many of these things have worked really, really well, but as the market tightens up and supply begins to diminish, or inventory, new supply certainly is very, very low, as again I'll talk about in a minute, but as inventory begins to fall away, a lot of these decisions that were made 2 or 3 years ago to get buyers to sell, you now need to drop these off. But again, if you said to a buyer, I'm going to change my payment terms on the 1st of May, most buyers over the last 2 years have said, well, I'll wait, because I'm sure you won't. The reality now is that most of you, in most cases, are able to drop away the long payment terms, drop away the interest-free loan, drop away the pricing the discounts that you were given, incrementally. One of my colleagues bought a nice apartment a few months ago, and the very, very generous developer sent those buyers that bought that month on a nice trip to Tokyo, and I got some nice postcards back from those people on my Facebook page the other day. So again, I don't think you'll all be having to do that for much longer. You can see here that the amount of advertising across the board for most sectors has really been quite dramatic in the middle of last year. But again, many of you are looking at what sector of the market do we come back to. You can see there was a spike in the ghost month. You know, I've been here 11 years and everyone tells me you can't sell in the ghost month. But the busiest month, certainly for last year, was during the period of the ghost month, the end of August and early September. So again, we're seeing some things really changing. People have realized that maybe there's some buyers out there that are prepared to buy in the ghost month period. You can see here the amount of advertising, the amount of new projects on the left, and the amount of advertising on the right. Still a huge amount of emphasis put on print advertising. And again, later during our panel, we'll talk a little bit about the other methods of getting your story out to the press. If you pick up this month's Heritage magazine, you'll see still 8 or 9 properties being advertised in Heritage magazine. I'm guessing there's probably very few of the developers sitting here in the front row today that use Heritage as their main source of getting their story out. I think that period may have passed. However, one thing that people ask me every day, oh, how is the market? And depending on how cynical I'm feeling, I say, oh, which part of the market? And then I say, are you buying or selling? The reality is that each part of the market is performing, whether it's the affordable, the high end, the middle end, or the luxury end. They're all performing differently. Last year, the affordable sector had a very, very good Q2, Q3, and probably Q4. And they were able to sell a large number of units consistently each weekend. And as families came out to their projects, they were able to see work, activity, construction, model units, and homes being finished. The government was trying to put a lot of emphasis into this market, although that money didn't really come through until earlier this year. The affordable home sector has been doing well for the probably last 1 year. And again, you may hear this morning just some of these numbers. You know, the developers in this sector have been able to sell large volumes throughout the year. Whereas the luxury end really hadn't started to get going until probably early this year. Looking at home loans and mortgages, something that is absolutely taken for granted in other Asian cities, let alone Hong Kong or Singapore. But the amount of mortgages and home loans that people take is skewed. What you'd expect it to be if you were new to Vietnam would be the people in the middle to the right-hand side taking mortgages and home loans. The reality is now people buying a $40,000 unit, many of them, in fact the majority of them, are taking some form of mortgage. And it's the people on the right-hand side, or the middle and the right-hand side, that are not taking any form of debt. So again, a very skewed situation, one that we thought in order for the market to actually recover, we thought there would need to be a debt market. It doesn't seem to be the case. However, if you talk to Techcombank, if you talk to any of the other local banks, the number of mortgages that they're actually writing now is 2 or 3 times what it was last year. So the recovery seems to be very much grassroots-led, and now the investors saying for their own use is actually increasing as well. So it's an interesting situation that we haven't really seen since 2006. That's a long time to wait. Some of you may be too young to remember that, but it's a very, very long time to wait, 6 or 7 years. For those of us that have worked in other markets where there's a good year, maybe 2 good years and 1 bad year, this is really anticipatory. I put down here at the bottom, or my colleagues have put for me just to remind me, just how we define luxury. And we argue about the word luxury because, as many of you know, that I banned the word luxury from CBRE about 4 years ago. No disrespect to anyone that's building luxury, but I just don't think, apart from the Hyatt, apart from Zai Riverside, apart from the Metropole, there is a great deal of luxury. And I know David Clarkinson at the back, and he will come and sit here. I know Jonathan from Gen Capital are building luxury, but in small volumes. And David has built a luxury resort out of the Sanctuary and is going to do something in District 2, and he'll tell us about that later. But I argue with my colleagues on a daily basis what is luxury. And so they said, well, how do you define luxury? And I do this. I take my J12 watch off, and I say, this is a watch that's advertised on the back of every Vogue magazine, every Elle magazine in the world. Actually, it's a men's watch, but it's advertised in Elle. And they make 50,000 of these watches a year. And it costs a lot of money. Apparently, my wife bought it for me when we had twins. I don't know why she bought it for me, but she knew my life was going to change. This is a luxury watch, apparently. 50,000 they make a year. My daughter and I went to Bhutan 2 years ago, and last year, for Christmas, she gave me a book. It's called Bhutan 2012. There are 2 copies of this in the world. Just 2. Just 2. She's got one and I've got one. So which is luxury? This watch, 50,000. This book, they make 2. And still my colleagues aren't convinced. She took these pictures and she sent them off to a Dropbox somewhere, and they all are pictures of her and me on our holiday in Bhutan. So these are the pictures of her and me in the snow and the eagle's nest in Bhutan. If you've ever been there, you'll recognize me. If you haven't been there, come and have a look afterwards. So these are the pictures that she took of our holiday. Is there anyone from Sonkim here today? Vera? Okay, well I have to get special permission to show you this. This is the very limited edition, just 2,000 copies of the 2014 Vera underwear. Sorry. Japanese colleague is getting a bit too close. This is the 2014 Vera underwear. Okay, you get the message. Okay, apparently, without my glasses, I can't see a thing. But there are, I think, 5,000 copies of this made a year. Do any of you get it? Does Chairman Xuan send it to you? If you drop him a note after this, he'll make sure that you're on the 2015 list. Just mention my name. Same daughter, last year, decided to make me a catalogue because she saw this and was rather horrified that I had this on my desk. So she sent the pictures off, her and me, over the last 12 years. Okay, sorry, the last 19 years. There's a rather sweet one of her with a conical hat when she was living in Vietnam when she was 9. Okay, so which is luxury? This or this? Okay, now my colleagues get it. They're actually telling me that this is luxury. So for a man of 55, luxury is time, exclusivity, personalized, and it's no longer just expensive. I'm just going to pick my watch up, put it on again so I don't lose it. But, you know, we talk about luxury every day, and some people are actually obsessed by luxury. Yep. But the reality is, as we move into the out of the low volume cycle, if you're going to build luxury, you can't build luxury for 750 apartments, unless you're very, very, very clever. I was lucky enough to go with Yumi to Las Vegas at TET, and we stayed with her aunt in a big tower where there were 750 apartments. 3 towers, 750 apartments. 3 different entrances. The concierge meets you. He greets you by name. And Yumi's aunt and uncle introduced us by name. So for the next 3 days, he called us by our names, which I thought was pretty good. We go into the lift, and the lift has, I must get this right, the lift to their apartment, the 28th floor, has 3 doors. So you put your key in, the key automatically tells you, if you can't all remember, which floor you're going to. Only that light comes on all the lights on the panel, and only the lift opens into your apartment. Now, it's not incredibly difficult. I'm sure if Mr. Schindler was here today, he could tell you, well, we've been doing that for 25 years, Mark. There's nothing clever about that. But if you're going to do a big block, whether it's 31 homes on the river or 750 apartments, and you want to call them luxury and get above $3,000 a square meter, you need to do some of these things. You don't need to give a J12 watch to everybody, but you certainly need to realize that things have moved. The best idea is to go to Bangkok or go to Singapore. It's cheaper. So it's not cheaper to buy, it's cheaper to go and find out. So you can see how over the last few months people have changed their payment terms really quite radically. And you can see here just, as I said, if you've been introducing and talking about these long payment terms, these very flexible payment terms. And there was a period where, certainly 6 months ago, if you said, I want this and this and this and this, do you know, that's sounding as if a developer is listening. You know, it has been so tough for many of you that you've had to listen. And in some cases, I've even known Singaporean developers actually change some of the terms and conditions in their 75-page contract. We can ask Caleb later today whether he's actually done it. But you know, when I haven't bought any apartments at the Vista, but I have bought some over the road, and occasionally I've got Capel to blink just once and change, you know, maybe a comma or a full stop, but at least I've got a little bit of traction. Actually, it's not me, it's my wife that's done it. And again, here, geographically, again, our markets seem to be quite polarized in District 2 and District 7. And that's where we're seeing that there's been limited new supply and a lot of take-up. So I'm guessing if there's anyone from Phum Hung here, I'm guessing if there's anyone from Mapletree, I'm guessing if there's anyone from any of the projects down in District 2, and Nave, Fulong I think is here today, they're probably feeling quite comfortable with themselves, and they'll be looking and dusting off the plans that they had back in 2007 for Phase 2, Phase 3, Phase 4, and they may even be looking to increase their land bank. And certainly in District 2, the developers there are looking across and looking at the sites up and down Highway 1 to see what may be available, especially as we're seeing the metro actually being built. I passed it this morning going over the Saigon Bridge, and for sure it's absolutely happening. I can look out of my window from the manor and I can see it's now on the other side of the road. It's crossed Dien Bien Phu and it's going through the park. In fact, they've closed the entrance to Ban Tan Park, the back entrance. So, is it time to reinvent? Is it time to renew? Is it time to innovate? Or is it time to just carry on and doing what we've done before? And the reason why we've called this talk Innovate, Imitate, or Reinvent, because it's so easy in life just to carry on and to tweak a few little things. But as I hope our panelists will tell us, a lot has changed. When you go fishing for, as we discovered last year in Binh Duong, if you go fishing in Binh Duong to find buyers with a Ho Chi Minh database, you get nothing. You don't just get 1 or 2 sales. Oh, Mark, I'm sorry, yes, it's a really bad day. It's been raining, or it's too hot, or Manchester United lost a game. You get nothing. And there's no excuse. If you go fishing for buyers with the same database you used last week, you get nothing. Because many, many people only buy once. The affordable sector, which is the vast majority of this country, and will be for many years to come, they're going to buy one property. So if you go with the same database, 2 weeks running, 3 weeks running, you'll still get the same result. As we move up the food chain and we go towards the high end and the luxury end, then yes, you can be a little bit less discerning, because many people that buy at the mid end and the high end actually own 2 or 3 or 4 properties already. David is smiling at the back of the room because he knows that anyone that buys at home has already got 4 or 5 properties and may be living in Hanoi and maybe running their own business and maybe own a BMW. So it's quite easy to cross-reference that. But if you're building affordable homes, you've got to find a new database every week. And by doing that, you've got to work with different service providers, or service providers that have got some very, very creative ideas. And again, I hope that our Singaporean friends this morning will tell us some of the ideas that they've used with their service providers to find new fish. We've shrunk our sales team from about 40 to under 10. And we've moved from just sales to sales management. And again, I'll tell you in a minute why we've done that. And we've had to change the compensation, we've had to change the way we reward people and the way we think. And it's been really challenging for us to do that. We've had to change the way we present our information. We've had to change the way we send it out to you. We've had to change the way that we create and we package things. People, we've discovered, really don't read a lot of text. And it's not just my generation, but I've noticed myself that if I don't see what I'm looking for straight away, I just trash it. It may be a beautifully put together document like the one on the left. I mean, a lot of information there. But the reality is, it doesn't really tell me what I want to know. It's there somewhere, but I've got to spend 5 or 6 minutes looking for it. And so, creating and just persuading my colleagues to just put the salient facts in and then link it to other things, such as here on the right, something we did a few weeks ago with a YouTube video, is what people want. And with all of you, I'm guessing all of you have got some form of smartphone, and you can read this on your iPhone. Again, just trying to put much more creative visuals, much higher quality visuals. Still, this one on the left, I get at least 10 times a week. And if you're here in the audience, it's great. Carry on doing it. But I think there's a better way. And I'm not being, I'm not saying that our way is best in any way. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that all of us, we are now bombarded in the lift, in everywhere, on TV, on our PCs. And many of us spend, I don't know, 8 to 10 hours in front of our PCs a day, or on smartphones. And if the material isn't of a very high quality, we just reject it. It's interesting to see, and it's not just foreign local. If any of you, on the way back to your office this morning, if you look at the material that you see just generally in the lift, on TV, it's really, really good quality that makes its way into the Million Point lift. What was available 2 or 3 years ago was rubbish. Now, everything. There is no delineation. There's no reason why a Vietnamese company can't have access to the same material and absolutely the same ideas that a Singaporean or a British company, or an American company. We started off. This was our first 2 methods of marketing. This is a brick. Some of you may remember the brick that we did 11 years ago. This was our idea to get a database, because we delivered a brick to, maybe Brian was here, maybe you were here, I think. We delivered a brick to, no, you were just the senior manager then, you weren't the CEO. We sent this to the CEO of every company in the AmCham Eurocham book, and we got back their name card. We collected 1,100 name cards by delivering this brick. Rather smart, with CBRE. This is the foundation, the cornerstone, the first part of any development project. And it cost me about $100 to buy 1,000 bricks, and I paid $1,000 for each. $1 for each name card we collected. And then we went on to the whistle. Some of you have been to some of our events where I've had to blow the whistle, get people's attention. Didn't have to blow it this morning. One of my colleagues from from Tokyo sent me this last week. They just opened their new office. So as you put it up, a nice bit of origami. So sometimes the old things are the best. Anyone older than 45 would actually rather appreciate this, because it's rather nice. We could make that in Vietnam. So next time you do a nice high-end residential project, you could send the invitation out like this. Nice. Easily done. As you walk down Dong Khoi, people are selling you things like that. This is quite a good commercial use. So there's loads and loads of things. Some of you may have sent or received my Viber invitation. Hopefully nobody received an SMS. Please tell me no one received an SMS. I banned SMSs. Didn't send out any myself. Now you get everything by Viber. Hopefully you got the invitation by Viber, those of you that have got a smartphone and use Viber. If you didn't, I apologize. Give me your number and we'll put it on. There's no doubt that certain people for high-end projects do like to receive, nicely put together invitations. I didn't actually go to Vietnam's top model, but certainly if you're doing something high-end, it's still there. People like three-dimensional things. You've all seen these. But again, the simplest thing, such as this, I think is what people actually, the new quirky idea is good. And there's nothing new about this. Absolutely nothing. I think children have been making origami for 1,000 years. But the tie-in with technology is good, because many of you may have gone to the wrong hotel this morning. Hopefully none of you did. But if you've got it on your smartphone, you've got it on Viber, you can check the time and the location and the address. So again, there's a huge amount to be done with it. But if you've got 6 invitations to do or to attend, or 6 events today, then it does get cluttered. So clutter is probably our biggest issue. Again, just coming back to what we've seen before, the end user market is certainly something that we've all been trying to catch. We'll hear later how the affordable housing guys have probably done it better than anybody else, and that as we move up the food chain, as I've said, we get further and further away from end users and the word investors. And I think people often say to a developer, why we're buying for our own use, we're buying for our children, and actually lease it out. And as we get closer to that point where the stock disappears, we'll see. So social media really helps us get sticky with who's buying, what they're buying it for, what they're using it for, and are they going to buy other products. So this is the big plus of that. And I think that the old salesman, the old American salesman with a black book and a Rolodex and 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 clients, in 2007 was replaced by a guy with a big Rolex watch, a big name card, 10,000 names, and it was so easy. And now we need to go back to the guy that's got the Rolodex and is talking to his clients about buying property and where they should buy and offering advice. And I think we've got to move back to that. And big numbers and mass mailing just doesn't work anymore. It really doesn't work. I tell myself. And again, these are some of the things that we're now using. I'm sure many of you are using some of these tools. I'm sure many of you are using probably the majority of them, but you're not using all of them. And I think in order to really define your product and set yourself up with a situation where you can talk to your clients, you need to be using as many of these as possible. And storing that data, and retrieving that data, and qualifying that data, and asking questions about that data. And I'm guessing some of you are so busy that just looking at the numbers and the sales and the cash flow, but you really need specialist people to do this, because it allows you to really define where to spend your dollars. The thing is that many of these things are so much cheaper than the things on the right, are so much cheaper than the things on the left. Print ads, signage, brochures, adverts in heritage are really expensive. The things on the right, initially they're expensive to get a good photographer, but they're not really expensive because you can use them again and again and again. And if your staff get good at them, as I said to you, my 22-year-old marketing assistant turned out to be a guru. She knew, as I said, far more about all of these things on the right than I did. Literally a month ago, I was still sitting in 2009 thinking that signboards and banners was the way ahead. They're still important, they're still relevant, but these things are far more relevant if you're going to go fishing to get new buyers every week or every month. Again, some of the things that, again, we're pretty used to. The website. The website in our Thai business can be as little as 600 hits a day to 1,900 hits a day, depending on what they put on it that day. And they're driving that traffic through the search engines, etc., and by their hot deals, which again I'll show you in a few minutes. Okay, many of you using YouTube, but only occasionally. Many of you are using Facebook occasionally. Many of you are using a mini blog once a year, twice a year. And very few of you really concentrate on getting your way up the SOE chain through Google and the other search engines. You need to be doing all of these consistently. And this takes a specialist. It's no longer just, something we use a guy, we hire a specialist, and he helps us with our website, once a year. These things need to be done constantly, updated. And they're expensive to start with, but they're very rewarding when you get them right. This is something that my friend Carl Gay did just a few weeks ago. He owns an apartment at Hyatt Regency. So he took his little handycam like this, and he made his own video. He wants to sell his unit on the 8th floor. So he did this in 2 or 3 hours. He's a project manager. He's been here 20 years. He's not a real estate salesman, but he knew that by doing this on a Sunday afternoon when his children were having their siesta or playing, in fact you can see his children later on, that he's a good chance if he put it on the web, so on the net, on YouTube, he'd find a buyer. This is one guy selling one apartment just to get it off his books. Some of you don't even do this when you're selling 500 apartments or land plots. And I'm sure he'll find a buyer for it. But you know, it doesn't take a lot, it doesn't take a huge amount of imagination. I like the dawn and the dusk that he did at the start. But you know, none of this is rocket science. You've all visited YouTube, or your kids have visited it. If you haven't, then it's about time you realize what you can do with it. And it's probably cost him basically an hour or two's missed siesta. The cost of this was zero. A bit of advertising for Innovate. Okay. I like the bit of his daughter drawing. Okay, very good. Okay, so just a couple of case studies. My colleagues are always worried I can talk too long, so they're waving at the back. I promise to be just a few minutes. So, we've had this vacuum for nearly 5 years. So, after we realized we needed to address the market again and work out what was the best way to go, there's no point saying, well, we all need to wake up. I think everyone's realized that in the room, and I think most of you are working hard on what's available. So we looked across at what our officers are doing in other markets. So in Singapore, there are loads and loads of rules and regulations regarding data protection, mass mailing, spam, junk email, and all the rest of it. And so they've taken, as you would expect in Singapore, they've got rules and regulations about lots of things, many things you couldn't even imagine. But we've hired 650 sales guys. Our office in Singapore is about 250, but on the back of it, in a different office, using a slightly different email, still wearing the same green, still using the same Dell notebooks. We've hired 650 sales guys, and they handle about 8 to 10 projects at a time. If you bear in mind, a good year in Singapore, they sell 17,000 condos. And we've hired 650 sales guys. It's interesting. Not sure if I'm going to be doing that. In Thailand, we handle between 35 and 40 projects at the same time, often on the same road, Saturn. At any one time, as you go down the BTS, on Saturn, or on Silom, or in Sukhumvit, we often have two competing sole agencies right next to each other. And there we have 80 staff are working on these projects as salesmen, and 13 staff just doing ad hoc, which is secondary market sales. So there they specialize in sales management and thought leadership. And they've used an awful lot of technology. If you go and look at CBRE's Singapore's website, you will be underwhelmed. You have to click about 6 times to get it. Richard and I did it yesterday afternoon. And they've got 8 projects. And you click on the little picture and it gives you a little bit of information. The rules and regulations in Singapore are so tight, that's the best we can do. You go onto our CBRE Thailand, and it tells you an awful lot. And the reason why Singapore has changed and why we're doing this is because the market, because the government has clamped down on secondary sales, on primary sales. They've stopped, they're trying to dampen speculation. And they're really, really having to use groups like CBRE to help them, because their sales volume has dropped by over 50%. It's really, really tight. Even with interest rates at 2.5% for 30 years, it's really very, very tough. And so groups that often have their own sales team are relying on CBRE. And that's why we've got 650 salesmen. And the rules regarding what they have to do are so, again, really tight. They have to do a 50-hour cycle of education. They have to get their certification. They have to get qualified, and each of them carries a CBRE name card with their estate agent's certification number. They have to make a certain number of calls a day. They have to make a certain number of visits a day. They have to do a certain number of sales a day. If they don't, if they break any one of these rules, they're out. They sit in an office the size of this room, 750 square foot, probably a little bit bigger. So they're never in there. They don't have enough desks for all 650. So it's like a sales machine. Very interesting approach to how to do sales. They've all got an iPad. And they're out of the office most of the time. But it's worth looking at the CBRE, both these websites. They're very, very different. They use a high degree of social media and Facebook. They've all got their own Facebook pages, so a sub-CBRE Facebook page. Whereas in Thailand, they've gone completely the opposite. Small number of people, huge amount of investment in each individual and each. They've got their own apps, again, worth looking at. They've got they spend a very big amount. Chris will talk to us later about what Red are doing in terms of branding. Working in Thailand is by far the best place. They've got the nicest beaches, the nicest properties, an awful lot easier to sell this than it is to sell something in Phu Quoc or in Con Dao. And again, these are some images. And they realize because the market is so competitive, with hundreds of launches across every sector in Thailand on a quarterly basis, if they don't put their money in to this branding, they really don't get any bang for their buck. They also they realize that their market is a very global market. They also have something called hot deals, which changes every week. And this drives the email traffic. People in Thailand are looking for a good deal. How strange is that? We should try that at times. Awful lot of photographs. You can see here the daily traffic can vary between 600 a day to 1900 a day. These are quite big numbers, certainly much, much bigger than what we're getting. And they've just gone, any of you may be familiar with the Sun newspaper. It's a small, it's a broadsheet as opposed to a big newspaper. And they just talk about, the headlines aren't this big, they're this big. You know, the photograph on the front page isn't this big, it's this big. Yeah? They probably had a supplement yesterday after the crisis at Manchester United. And if Liverpool win, they'll have a 15-page supplement. These are, you know, it's in your face. The Singaporeans are so discreet because of the data protection, and the Thais are in your face. Two very interesting ways, and we're looking at them both closely. Again here, lots of pictures of the people that are selling to. The lady in the middle came to Vietnam 3 weeks ago, and on our Circle of Excellence, and she was at the top table of $5 million salesmen, she was dressed in Thai costume, and I was sitting opposite her. She's a very, very quiet lady, and I thought she was probably the financial controller. Nothing wrong with finance. But she really didn't say much at all. So I engaged her across the table, and I said, "Oh, how was your year?" She said, "Yeah, well, it wasn't that good. It wasn't that good." And I said, "Which team are you?" So I'm in residential sales. At which point her face lit up a bit. And I said, "So how many sales did you do last year?" She said, "That was a really bad year, and I'm surprised I'm here." I said, "Well, that's great too, isn't it? But how many sales did you do?" She said, 1,500 sales. So I shut up. She said, "Well, last year I did 2,000. And so I said, how do you do it? She said, "Oh, well, we're very, 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 very focused. Each of us have got our own database. We cannot tap into the main database and send it out as spam. It doesn't work. We're focused, we've got our own team, our own projects, and we're a machine. And we often run 3 or 4 big projects at the same time." So I said, "No mass mailing." She said, "No, the only mass I've got is a Maserati." Expensive car. They win lots of prizes. Loads and loads and loads of prizes. If you go to any of these big events, it's boring, because CBRE Thailand wins them. So I'm just going to go back 2 slides. I missed something I really want to explain. I don't think I can see it there, but their website is in Thai, English, Chinese, and Russian. They never miss a trick. The Thais lead the way in project marketing. I'm really in awe of them. And the other thing this lady told me was, she actually wasn't the best salesman of the year. There was another person that did more than she did. But she won it the year before. However, okay, there's my thoughts on, and you can make up your own mind. Do you innovate? Do you update? Do you imitate? Hopefully I've shown you a few ideas today that you can imitate. Or do you reinvent? Or do you do nothing? But the reality is, it still comes down to this. It still comes down to transparency. I'm glad to see that Vietnam has got a little bit more further advanced, not on data protection, but on customer service and consumer protection. So the rules that came out on whether you can sell a pillar, or whether you can put the pillar in the GFA or the NFA or the saleable area. I think there's a lot more information now in the public domain about property management, estate management, who pays for it. So please, this is a slide we've used about 10 times, and I haven't changed it for a reason, because it's still important to us at every level. As a developer, as a buyer, as a business person, transparency, valuation, structuring. How you structure. Do you think we can all go back to 10%, 10%, cash now, then I'll start building? I don't think that's going to work for a while. That may work when the market's really, really hot, but no one's going to buy that anymore. They want to see you and me put some sweat in the ground before they'll put the money down again. I really don't think we'll be that lucky as we were in 2006, 2007. And I think valuation. You trying to buy land again, top up your land bank, may not be so easy. So I haven't changed the slide. Probably the next 10 years it'll be there. I'm not trying to preach, I'm just trying to say these are things we've got to wake up and be real to. The transparency issue, and I don't know if there's a Vietnamese word for transparency, but what these websites are all about, you may think they're about having a relationship with a possible buyer, stickiness. But what the buyer is telling you is, I want transparency. What I liked about that little film was it was very transparent. You really were seeing what was available at the Hyatt Regency. And it looked great. And how much did it cost? Nothing. So it's trying to find that 2-minute YouTube shot for something that you're developing. That's the trick. And that's why CBRE can help you. So thank you very much for that.